Advisory Committee for January 29th to order. Our first order of business is to introduce our new member, Kevin Calcutt. Welcome.
Thank you.
And take attendance, and I'll kick it off with Kevin Calcutt.
Here.
Melissa Sear.
Here.
Mike G.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Ken Fitzgerald.
Here.
Rob Garrity.
Here.
Thais Hickman.
Sorry.
There we go. Here. Okay. And Dave Lutz is here. We have hopefully a pretty tight agenda tonight. It's a kickoff for the spring budget season for us. We're going to hear from Rich McCarthy about a couple of planning board items that are going to be on the agenda, should be on the warrant, and then Justin's going to give us an overview of sort of where we're at with the budget, early deliberations, things like that. And then I'll let these folks go, and then I'd like to have a reorganization meeting. We try to do these first thing every year. Ask for anyone's nominations for any positions on the committee, and set a slate and vote on it. With that said, how did that work? Are you going to say something and then kick it to Rich and then stick around? I'm going to kick it to Rich McCarthy, the town planner, who's going to talk to us about one thing I know we're going to take up and one thing we might be taking up, right? Or then whatever else might be on the town meeting warrant for the spring, or what you think might be on there.
Hey, Dave.
Good evening. I would say, use the term couple loosely
Okay.
in terms of zoning. So the first one I'll talk about is the accessory dwelling units, which I'm sure most of you are pretty aware of, that the Affordable Homes Act last year was passed by the state legislature, which amended the zoning act, which allows for accessory dwelling units by right, whether they're attached or detached to a principal dwelling unit, essentially a single-family home, in a residential zoning district. As part of when the law was passed, in there was a provision whereby the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities could either issue guidelines or regulations. And if you happen to follow along with the MBTA zoning that was passed a few years ago, they had, when that went before, they didn't actually put out regulations, they put out guidelines, which we now heard from the SJC that they actually in fact need to put out regulations, which they put forth some emergency regulations. So having learned that lesson from that process, they put together regulations, and they issued their final regulations this past week, which will take effect January 31st. The law, when it went in, was voted on, had a 6-month phase-in, so the effective date will be actually it's coming up, February 2nd. A few things about that. Towns don't necessarily have to do anything in terms of their zoning bylaw, but there's several provisions within the law and that towns can consider, and which we are considering. The planning board held a public hearing on Monday this past week on a draft proposed bylaw, and they did continue it to the February 11th planning board meeting, primarily one, to get the feedback through the public hearing process, but second, the regulations weren't completely into effect. They just got released, so we wanted to see how those relate to the proposed bylaw. And in the proposed bylaw, it defines what ADU is. There's a maximum size, 900 square feet, or half the square footage of the principal dwelling unit, whichever is smaller. But I will tell you that the way they're defining square footage, basements kind of count. So it actually, theoretically, I would say, it depends how you look at it, bumps up an ADU in terms of the size, larger.
Hold on, just so I understand, the 900 square feet is a cap, it's the maximum cap, and then if your house is 1,700 square feet, you can only go to less than 900.
850.
850, thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
I would have gotten there soon.
I would, exactly, although I would say because they allow basements, there's probably more going to be towards the cap side of things.
Right, so if you live in a really small house, maybe, but, yeah.
Yeah.
2.5 stories. You winding me?
A provision that's a town can adopt is to prohibit Airbnb, short-term rental, in the ADU, not the principal dwelling. So it's just relation to the ADU. There's a provision to allow for a site plan review process, what that may be, at the local level. The way the promulgated the regulations, everything essentially needs to be focused that you can't really go too far to regulate these that you would more than a single-family dwelling. There's a little bit of leeway, but primarily you have to think about it as a principal dwelling, a single-family home. One of the things they did clarify, which was significant in the beginning, was that where they're allowed. In the statute it says residential zoning district. When the first regs came out, it was wide open. They had anything where you could put a house, single-family home, by variance, exception, so essentially it created this, could be allowed anywhere in town. What they did come back in the final regulations, it's where a residential zoning district where a single-family home is allowed or allowed by special permit. So in our case, it's the residential 1, 2, and 3, and then 2 business districts, the B3 and B4. So that's something that is incorporated into the schedule of use table. Good.
But we have a no on B3 and B4.
On that version.
Okay.
That was one of the things we were waiting to see what would shake out in terms of the final regulations. So, and hence why the planning board opened the hearing and then continued to the February meeting. A key piece of them having the hearing January 27th was that having it published and advertised and holding a hearing essentially creates a freeze. So we then get to go to town meeting if we adopt the bylaw. Anything between February 2nd and to the time of town meeting would be subject to the new bylaw, presuming it gets voted on by town meeting.
But they can't proceed until it's voted on.
Right. Well, what they can do is look at the proposed bylaw and see if they can comply or not. And they can proceed at their own risk. I would probably suggest somebody wouldn't do that because the way our bylaw is proposed, there's a site plan review process involved with it. So, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You finish your thought and then.
So it may be a risky proposition, if you will, to try to proceed until that's done. So anyway, there is a provision in the regulations, which is also in the statute. A ADU that's in a half-mile radius of in our case, the train station, cannot require off-street parking for that. So there's no off-street parking that's permissible. Outside of that radius, and remind you, it's a radius, so it is a much bigger area than, it's a pretty significant sized area. You can require off-street parking for outside the radius. So that's one of the things that the planning board is incorporating into the draft bylaw, which you probably saw the draft, you saw that in there. There's a few other things that they're, based on the regulations that came out, was the issue with the setbacks. The way it came back, it is subject to dimensional setbacks, also subject to accessory structure setbacks. So the original version that you have there, the ADU is going to be subject to what a single-family home setbacks would be, the 25 feet, 50 feet from the street. As you know, we spent a lot of time with accessory structures and setbacks. So in that instance, the height gets you closer to the side and rear lot lines. Our bylaw does say not in the front yard.
Right.
One of the provisions that, the required front yard, that 50-foot space. One thing that we're incorporating, the planning board I just sent them to them today. I saw a provision in Medway, which they had in their bylaw that the ADU couldn't be closer to the street than the principal dwelling unit. So you wouldn't have essentially an ADU in front of a principal dwelling, which in some instances, I'm sure a lot of people would like to see it that way, not necessarily sitting in the front, depends, but, and not in the front yard. So we'll see if that goes in there. Another provisional change was that if an ADU, and again, the planning board has to kind of decide on this, but if it's internal to the house, in terms of conversion to a accessory dwelling unit, you're not enlarging the footprint of the house, then that would just go for a building permit. It wouldn't go through a site plan review process. The site plan review for detached or where a single, the principal dwelling was expanding its footprint. So that's a change from that version that you saw. That's in there as well. So I'll pause now just to.
And just to double check, you said, when are you continuing the hearing?
February 11th.
And the assumption is they'll vote on it that night, or?
Yeah, the assumptions. One thing I do want to add that there was an email from HLC that the Attorney General would review bylaws ahead of time, like she had done previously with the MBTA. So I think we'll have to see how this goes. We might send it to her in advance, but yeah, most likely they would vote on it that would be the final version on the February meeting.
Does anyone have any specific questions? I don't want to get too deep into it tonight because we're going to end up doing this again. This is sort of to give us a big picture on what's going to be coming up.
Is it just one per?
A good point. So it is one with a cap of 2. So one is a protected by right accessory dwelling unit, and by special permit 2.
This version says 2 or more.
That's another change.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have to have the 2 in by the guidance?
It's a little bit
Regs.
debatable, yeah, whether we have to have 2 or more.
So we could, in other words, you may be able to cap it. If we chose to cap it at 1, we might be able to.
You might be able to. What it does say is more than one has to go through a special permit process.
Anyone else have any questions?
You mentioned the town could prohibit Airbnb short-term rentals, but do you have any insight into whether that is something that
It is actually
we
in
are
this.
pursuing? It is?
Yeah, it is,
Okay.
it is being pursued, yes.
And what's the definition of a short-term rental? Not to get.
I think it's 30 days.
Under 30 days?
Under
so
30 days.
Over 30 days is
Not
permissible.
short-term.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
And we don't have anything on the books about Airbnbs currently.
No,
Do we have? Has anyone ever bothered to look?
Yeah,
Oh, it came up.
there's a couple.
we do.
Yeah.
We do, yeah.
Couple like in-law there's a couple that float around, you'll see.
There's like one that advertises like a game house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, down by close to the stadium, there's one or two, so.
All right.
Yeah, we have a couple.
And then there's World Cup next year, so watch out.
Yeah. And so the board kind of debated about that, not debated, but they had a good, healthy discussion on it. And, they're kind of mixed on the thought of it. And what the approach is to put it in there. And then if it's not necessarily an issue, you could always remove it. And the reason why we wanted to have it in there is as you know, zoning, if you don't have it in there, then you're going to have things that could be protected. So you could have the have and the have-nots on it. It's better to be a little bit more conservative, so that's why it's being proposed to be in there.
Rob?
Could you send us the latest guidance/regulations?
Yes.
From HLC? So we
Yep.
can, okay.
Yeah, because then that'll, and I have I'll email you a red line version of it too, which is nice. They put it together so you can see the changes.
Rob?
And is SPR required in the guidance?
It's not.
All right, and I noticed our SPR requires you to submit floor plans of the existing home and the accessory dwelling, which seems like really nosy.
Site plan.
SPR site plan review,
all right.
which is a by right kind of thing, but you can not get an approval, right? I mean, that's the way site plan reviews.
Yeah,
We can't deny it, but we don't have to grant it right away. So you can just jerk around an applicant for a long time.
We built in a time frame within
Yeah.
it, but
So, I'll, when we do talk about it later, as you know, I have a thing about zoning the interior of a house, which I hold is illegal under Massachusetts zoning law. So like, why are we requiring floor plans? It seems to be immaterial.
so the purpose for the floor plan is actually to get a sense of what the, well, one, the square footage, to verify what that number is. But also it helps in terms of the Board of Health, I think, having those plans to know what the bedroom, what potentially could be a bedroom.
Septic systems.
Well, but that's in the Board of Health regs. That's nothing that's not the planning board's business.
No, it's not the planning board business. I completely understand. But I will tell you that I think folks many times come in the office naively thinking
Yeah.
that if there's a closet, that's the determining factor whether it falls as a bedroom or not, which is not the case. So those are kind of things that, while you might, as an applicant, be kind of a little disappointed or perhaps not too excited about that, I think having that information is pretty critical in the process, in that sense. And the reason why they decided to go with site plan review, and it's being recommended, is because it is, it is a additional dwelling unit, and it could have impacts on adjacent neighbors, and, not everybody is a good neighbor. And I wish they were, but, from what comes in our office, the complaints that we get, that's not the case. And so, the stakes are a little bit higher in a way. This is a good thing for a lot of people, and I fully appreciate it. It's a good thing, but it's also, managing, how it's people, if it turns out it's, we don't see these issues crop up, then perhaps, the board may decide to get rid of it. But it is, again, trying to gauge where we're at. It's brand new. If we don't have it, then we can't go back, so we have this have-nots approach, so.
What would be the criteria for an approval or denial here? Because isn't this now Massachusetts law that accessible dwelling units are permissible? So what are your criteria, if you've gotten that far yet, on whether or not to approve or deny?
It is really, it's not a denial. It's an approval. It's an approval with review. You can't deny it.
Okay. Thank you.
Even if I don't want to have a vegetated buffer between my pool house and my regular house?
Yeah, so that's another provision that we removed.
Oh, that's gone too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice, you get to see the before and after.
Rob, they know you too well. Rob's going to ask about this.
Yes.
Kevin? Yeah.
So I'm going to wait to get into the nitty-gritty of zoning regulation until
Yeah.
after the public hearing is done.
Yeah.
But have you had anybody in town come to you showing interest in being first in line to build something like this when it is available?
Yes,
How many? Ballpark.
it was 3.
3. Okay. That's more than I thought.
Greater than 2 and less than 4.
And I will tell you, not without specifics, but generally in terms of why, having a review process can be helpful is because we've already seen some applications come in for heating and cooling, accessory structures, and,
It's obvious.
and then applying for permits to tie into their septic system for office-related uses,
toilet in your garage?
which is not the same as for a bedroom. So,
Writing shed.
Okay.
so as much as everybody,
Understood.
we have a big range of what we see.
Yep. All right, so when we talk, I don't know how much we're going to get into the schedule tonight, but we'll talk about scheduling you guys. But before we go on, I think you want to talk about what might
What
be
else?
happening.
Yeah, what else?
What else be happening in the B1 potentially, or whatever. I know there was a presentation from MAPC to you folks.
Yeah, so before I get to that one, I'll just kind of go.
Oh, yeah, what else, just a quick one. I don't want to ask a
No,
lot
no,
of
that's
questions
fine.
about
Yeah,
this,
no.
but yeah, go ahead.
Electrical vehicle charging stations.
Yep,
That's something that we don't have anything on the books. It's only allowed in 2 districts.
currently,
Currently.
right.
So we're putting together a bylaw in terms of review on that. Because as you know, I'm sure you're aware, there are commercial operations now in terms of electric vehicle charging stations.
Are you proposing to expand the zones or the districts they're allowed in, or?
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, all right.
So, I mean, it would go in it would be permissible in all the districts. The residential district would be by special permit, though.
Right.
Can I put a gas station in a residential district by special permit?
No, you can't.
Well, then why should I put an electric vehicle charging station in the residential?
We could, the town could choose not to do that. I will say there are municipal properties in residential districts that could very well,
No.
Well, then why are you asking?
What?
Never mind. We're going to take this outside, Rob.
so,
I'm the one here who owned an electric car once, so.
I notice you don't anymore.
One once.
and then we're making minor changes to the special permit section of the zoning bylaw to reflect the new master plan. That should be pretty, hopefully not controversial. And then another change to that section, which is in the criteria, it says, have you filed a site plan? And that's with the planning board, that is, okay? Essentially, it's kind of really, frankly, been kind of ignored over the years because not everything requires a site plan through the planning board, so we're making a change to that so it states that if it's required, has one been filed. So it's a minor change to that. And then we're updating the floodplain bylaw. We received a letter from FEMA. The new floodplain maps will go into effect July 8th of this year. So it's just simple. We updated the bylaw a few years ago, the guts of the bylaw. It's a map change, so ironically, last time was July 21 of 21, I think was the date. But, excuse me, and this one will be July 8th of 2025. So it's and then we're getting rid of an address, nothing significant. And then the last is the special permit provisions within the section dealing with all special permits. To change it from 1 year to 3 years, state law allows for 3 years in terms of how long a permit is good for. So we're going to move it to be consistent with state law. And then for state lots, similarly, that'll be consistent. So and then last of not but least, we are looking at the B1 district in terms of the mixed use requirements as well as the impact of the inclusionary bylaw related to it. If you get a chance, there was a presentation by MAPC they made on 20.
I had a problem opening it today, so I didn't even try to forward it, so I was at work all day and I really couldn't spend a lot of time, but
Okay.
in the office, which means I shouldn't have been looking at it, but I'll try again and send and forward it. It's also, the presentation I think is on the NCTV.
It is on NCTV, yes, yeah. So in terms of those changes.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, yeah.
This will sort of tell us how long we're going to talk about this, but is there a chance this is going to be on the spring as an article this spring?
So you're saying there's a chance? Yes. Well, that's the goal. So it's kind of, we move the ball along, and if it's, vetted out, and we feel like it's ready, that it's in the position that it could be voted to be adopted. Obviously, you kind of want to be that. And similar to what we did in the B1, we kind of moved the ball along, and then it was, things came up.
Over like 3 years, though, so.
Well, I know. Well, we're trying to move a little bit quicker, I guess.
Okay.
But the goal is definitely to bring it to the spring town meeting.
If you guys
Which
come
means
to
it
us, if you guys come to us 3 weeks before we have to, or 3 days before we have to get our stuff through looking for approval, we're not gonna be happy, just to let you know, so.
So
keep that
what-
in mind.
Yeah,
That
so
we
the-
have an approval that we have to sign off on, we have
no.
to vote one way or the other. I
Sure,
shouldn't say sign
yeah.
off, but-
So, in terms of that timeline, I think we don't want to be past, in terms of this hearing in April, the beginning meeting in April, the planning board. I know that
That's pretty
pushing,
close for
right?
us, yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have a fall town meeting that is engineered for bylaws.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, that's kind of,
Just to give you a sense, is the frustration of the committee with the planning board process was almost entirely because of the last changes to the B1. That you kept coming to us, and then you were pulling it back, and then you'd come back the next year, and then you'd pull it back, and then you vote on it, and then you'd make a change after we had voted on it. So just keep that in mind. That happened, I don't know the chronology, but that happened.
so the memory is very, very lucid
Right.
on that, okay? So, for sure. Actually, and that's kind of.
And I can talk to,
What's that?
Chad still the chair?
Yeah.
I'll talk to Chad, too.
Oh, he knows.
Yeah, okay.
No, believe me. It's been well ingrained in terms of that process, how it needed to be changed. So that's why it's kind of,
I know. I think we voted.
I
on-
couched it.
We voted on one thing for you guys, like, in the meeting before town meeting, which is just the absolute worst for a zoning.
Understood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for a zoning thing, so.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
It's in mine.
Okay. Because we have to be nice, but we don't have to be,
Well, yeah, I mean.
we can be
don't want-
grumpy about it.
Yeah, understood.
And he starts grumpy, so.
And it gets worse from there.
Yeah. But it's kind of.
So anyways,
Yeah.
is it really, I mean, you don't have any real details yet, obviously, so.
No, I don't.
We'll get you the presentation, guys. I'm sorry. I was supposed to ask for it from Rich last week, and I asked for it yesterday or Monday or something like that, and he got it to me last night, and I couldn't open it today, so.
And what we can do is, so MAPC is, they took the feedback of the board and met with them earlier this week, and what they're going to do is present some policy options for the planning board to consider at the February meeting. So that'll really kind of be the kind of test where we're at.
Okay.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Is there a pending project that is awaiting any changes to the B1 zoning project that could potentially be held up because of pushing this from spring to fall?
There is a potential project, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. They're not demanding anything, are they? Not as of yet.
No, yeah. I will say they've been well educated on, in terms of zoning changes in the town and the process, and the fact that I mentioned earlier that if you rush and it's not well set up, in terms of also education, like what it's all about for the people, it's not going to get approved.
It did get a lot of commentary going on Facebook this week and last week.
Yeah, I did
The
see.
hearing that, or the
Oh, the meeting?
presentation
Yeah, yeah.
engendered a significant amount of back and forth with some
I
folks.
did see, yeah, read some of that.
Yeah. Is that it? Unless someone, has anyone got any more
That's it.
questions on that process, or I think Kevin sort of, I think, got at the nub of one of them, but,
We do have some street acceptances coming up, right?
yeah, we're fine. We're good. Done properly. Thank you. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
You can go home now if you want, or you can stay and watch us do the rest of this.
I'll go home now, but I'll just watch it on TV.
Sure you will.
Justin, would you like to join us?
Sure.
I did forward you some stuff that Justin got to us. I can't look at mine because my brand new.
It was full of good news.
I looked at it before I sent it to you, but I didn't look at it again.
Want any of it?
No, I'll just listen to Justin. We received sort of a financial projections overview and then a presentation on that, I guess is how I would put it.
I think so. I forwarded, I think last year I told the advisory committee and I spoke with the select board. One thing that I wanted to implement moving forward is having a financial forecast as a jumpstart of our budget process. I know we haven't, done that previously, and I think that's an important part of our process. So this year we did. Todd and I gave a presentation to the select board last week, Tuesday, so I wanted to forward it along to you guys. If we want to dive into it deeper, I wasn't planning on doing it this evening, but I can sort of high level do it if that's something that
If
would
you
be nice.
give us a high level, I think.
All right. The first thing I would say with a forecast, and I said this to the board, and I say this to people, particularly if it hasn't been something that's been ingrained in our process, a forecast, generally speaking, it tends to take a lot of assumptions. There's not a lot of information that we have when we build a forecast. We're taking a lot of assumptions, so we're trying to project, X, health insurance, X on, revenue, et cetera. So they're just baseline things. And when we did this, the governor's numbers weren't out. I got some information about health insurance after. And forecasts tend to look pretty gruesome because we haven't done a budget process yet with our departments. We are just, we're not looking at bringing numbers down, et cetera. So high level for our forecast this year, let me see how I do want to, just see how if I want to go with slides. I would say that we have about a $1.5 million deficit. That's kind of been where it's been since I've started the town. I think the only thing that's very different from since when I started the town is that when we balanced the budget, we used ARPA funds, both of the previous fiscal years. We don't have those ARPA funds available to balance the budget. That was something worrisome that we mentioned here last year, and that's something that I think we're going to have to take a look at. Major drivers of this deficit are fixed costs, sort of, health insurance, benefits, things like that. A lot of our school demands, we have increased enrollment, school demands for, revenue. So those are large drivers. I'll just quickly go through some quick things on the assumptions that we had in there, and then you guys tell me how far you want me to go further than that. In the forecast, there's no projection of overrides or anything in those figures. And also, one of the questions that one of the board members asked is, in the forecast, are we projecting anything from Southwood in the forecast? We're not projecting any revenue from Southwood in the forecast. So it's pretty level, 2.5% growth estimates throughout, and sort of level new growth. Local receipts, small increases on local receipts, and very minimal increases on state aid. High-level expenditures, we are expecting about 4% growth in projections, or assuming in town and Norfolk public school budgets, and 6% in our regional and tri-county schools, because we already had sort of notification from KP and tri-county that we had more students sort of going there, so we expected to have a higher assessment there. Health insurance, at the time, we've typically had higher rates on health insurance, and it's generally been at 9%. This week, and this shows you while a forecast can be a great tool, but sometimes you get surprised. This week, 9% is the minimum health insurance growth for us, and it's 20% is the maximum growth on health insurance. So that's a very big increase that we'll be looking at as part of this budget process, and we'll see where we fall. And then we've got an updated pension schedule from the county. I don't know if I shared this with you all yet. I don't know if we had the new schedules, but the county has pushed out their fund rate. It was anticipated to be 2030. It is now going to be 2035. So we have an updated schedule from the county regarding that. So that's a little.
Can you explain what you mean by pushed out?
Yeah, I would say that according to the state, you can have a schedule that goes out to 2040. The goal was to have pensions fully funded by 2030. The county has had a sort of,
You're pushing out the fully funded.
yes, it's had a high rate of return estimate, and 2030 isn't a tangible target any longer. If we were to get to 2030, it would have almost, for Norfolk, for example, it was almost a 30% increase in our pension costs to get to 2030. And so when municipalities got the information from the county, pretty much all municipalities said, there's no way we can fund this. And so they went back to the table, and then they pushed out the calendar to 2035. So what we have is an updated calendar that recently came in, I believe around November or so. And then, obviously there's collective bargaining. For the town right now, DPW and clerical are settled, and we're having conversations with police and fire, and I think the school's contract is up the following year. So that's where we're at. Sort of collective bargaining.
Norfolk schools.
Norfolk Public Schools, yeah. And actually, KP's teachers are settled till next year as well.
Who's settled? DPW and who?
Clerical. Till 27.
And you did police and/or fire last year. I can't remember which one, right?
No.
2 years ago?
Yeah, fire, when I came aboard, they were going through our arbitration process, so they're settled at the same point as June 30th of this year's police.
Okay. Does anyone have any specific questions on stuff, or?
One question on the health insurance. We're still in Maya.
Yes.
I ask this every year only because I'm deeply ensconced in benefits with my wife being on that end of the world, and any thought of going to another broker and just saying, market this and show us some numbers, because Maya has that exclusive relationship with Blue Cross, and Cabot Risk is not going to show you anything but Blue Cross. They get penalized by Blue Cross if they do. There's all sorts of weirdness that goes on there, and so we're just trapped with Blue Cross, and if the city of Brockton's running poorly, we're sucked along with it. I keep advocating for, throw it out there to some brokerage and see what they come back with.
One of the things that we did do, and our assistant town administrator, Kate, was very helpful in this, is one of the things that was really important to me is that we did take a look at some other options. We talked with another broker. Just our situation, we were higher on claims.
Is our experience bad right now? Yeah.
So they recommended that it probably wouldn't be a good time to go out for it. So we're hopefully seeing, last year was a little bit better. Hopefully, if things are a little bit better, that's something we absolutely keep exploring and taking a look at to realize savings not only for the town, but also the employees as well. It is a brutal market. GIC is up pretty extensively this year as well. It's kind of tough all around. KP actually is going out to the market now to take a look, and they're pretty high as well.
Yeah, I just know Maya's cornered it, and then they get the last piece of it. They get is if I don't know where the dental for the people in Norfolk is, but then they try to force you into Blue Cross Dental too, and then they truly have you locked in. Yeah. Then the gun's to your head, and it's just how much more is it this year, and there's no negotiating at all.
Something that I remember you guys talking about this last year, same position.
We'll talk about it next year.
Explore, yeah, we'll keep talking about it. We'll keep talking about it, and we'll keep exploring and taking a look. It makes sense.
Just.
Go ahead, Thais, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Have you considered adding the projections from the Dedham Street project in here? I know when they gave their presentation, the developers had some financial projections in there. I think it would be helpful for the town to see what the financial benefits would be with that project included, given that we just voted on that, the zoning requirement. So I don't know, just something to consider as we move forward, because I think they're going to be coming back around for another vote. So just something to potentially consider. They did have financial projections based on developing that site in terms of revenue.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take a look at it. We tend to, as I said, it was sort of a forecast. We tend to try to be a little more conservative, but we'll take a look at it. Actually, we got a notification from the state DLS, and I haven't talked with Todd about it yet. It came in today, where they're doing a workshop with finance directors and so forth, and they'll work with you on some equalized valuations, pulling stuff from their database. So it's probably something that I'm going to talk with Todd and probably take a look at exploring that and see if, having another set on a set of eyes on our forecast, and if there's a way to make it better or add, or if someone has another suggestion, I think we will explore it and take a look at it. So appreciate your feedback as well. Sorry, I don't see you, so I'm just talking to the ether. It's a little weird, but
Thais, we're having an issue getting you on the monitor, and I'm trying to figure out if it means you're not going to be able to vote when we vote on minutes and stuff like that, because you're supposed to be visible
I
when
can
you...
turn this around if you want
Okay.
to see her.
Just to let you know, we hear you, but we don't see you, so... And while I was trying to figure that out, I heard you asking about Southwood, and I didn't hear the answer, but I have a particular question. I can understand if they're not going to be actually building and paying, but do you think they'll be filing any permits at any point in the next fiscal year? Permanent revenue?
Bill from GFI Partners, he's on my list to talk to,
Okay.
and we'll see.
The one on Southwood that I asked about, it was the Dedham Street project that we voted on last town meeting, in the fall town meeting.
That's
We voted.
the Southwood thing, same thing. I keep
Okay,
calling it
sorry.
Southwood Hospital. And
Yeah, we call it Southwood. And they-
Sorry.
No,
That's not your fault.
Yeah, you're not, actually, because they've tried to move us away from saying
want us to
Southwood.
call it Dedham.
They want us to call it Dedham, but people know it as Southwood. Yeah, so no, I haven't incorporated that in, and once I speak with Bill and have a little more indication there, because there's still some significant stuff that we need to figure out.
Kevin.
Justin, how much free cash did we certify at the end of last year?
3.2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's. I can give you the exact figure. We
Nope,
included
that's
it.
plenty good enough, thank you.
So, along those lines, I look at the free cash numbers, which in fiscal 2017, it was 1.5 million, 1.5 million in fiscal 18, and now since fiscal 22, we've been running these 3,029,2932. And look, on the one hand, I like free cash because that tells me you're budgeting very conservatively, particularly on local revenue, local receipts. That's good. We don't want to overextend ourselves. On the other hand, free cash sort of concerns me as an area for mischief, because well, it becomes really easy to spend it in the next year. Look, we got this $3 million we can throw at vehicles or this or that and the next thing without having a plan. So we don't have a capital plan.
I disagree.
We do have
We do have a capital plan. We don't have a funded capital plan, other than funding it ad hoc through free cash.
That's fair.
Which is, I think, a little problematic, because it's up to the whim of town meeting. Yeah, I mean, eventually town meeting will do what you say, more or less. But
Say that on camera?
well, no, I mean, really, how can a normal... we can't even go and argue with the finance people at town meeting, okay? Town meeting's a little outdated to handle a $60 million corporation and talk about issues like this, all right? It's a little, overwhelmed. And I look at the local receipts stuff, budget versus actual, and so your local receipts are only like a third of free cash. And free cash is what, unexpected new growth?
No,
I mean, where's the...
Departments are coming under budget, too.
That's a piece of it.
Departments, right?
That's a piece of it, because,
Yeah.
for example, our previous year, and this is part of, a collective understanding, we had quite a bit of turnbacks from our departments, and those were strategic decisions on some things. One, vacancies, saying, hey, we're not going to fill this position because I want to realize savings. General government, we had like 82% of our budget, but we had some vacancies, and we strategically said we're not going to fill them, because one thing that I have seen coming down the pipeline is my concern about utilizing those one-time sources of funds to balance our budget.
Yeah.
And so the other part that you said, Rob, that's absolutely correct. We use free cash for capital as well, too, right?
Yeah.
And so if we're going to utilize more free cash to balance our budget, that's also going to lead to a cascading issue that continues to grow, and then that eats into your capital as well. So I know, immediately I knew people were target, and we've had this conversation before, $3.2 million free cash, but the thing that I had kept in mind for this following year and why that was important to do is we used ARPA to balance the budget last year.
Right.
We used the special ed reserve fund to balance the budget this past year, and we can't use that again because it's 150 is pretty much gone already.
Yeah.
So they want to add to it, and that's not going to happen. And then I knew our schools they're going to ask for, a significant amount of funds.
Yeah.
I was worried about that. I think we need to have free cash to protect us a little bit. So that's why we made some strategic decisions last year.
Just one point. I would like to see that free cash actually part of the budget process, I guess is what I'm saying. Because when you go to town meeting and say we're balancing the budget on free cash, non-recurring revenue, well, it's not actually non-recurring revenue because we are generating historically, if you look back at our previous budget, I think this is historically high amounts of free cash, which leads me to think we're doing something a little, I don't want to say wrong, but just not.
We've also kept a balance, too, that we haven't touched. We had an unexpended amount of free cash. I want people to know, when we had $2.9 million last year, we didn't spend $2.9 million in capital, et cetera, or put it into the budget. We used about 1.2 on capital. So we are also rolling over some free cash from the previous years, too, to give us some protection a little bit. Like I said, this year, I think and the past 2 years, we have ticked up local receipts. We've gotten a lot more aggressive than what we've done before to try to have some more revenue to address, these expenditures that are growing. So this is going to be a very unique, I think we're going to see exactly when we get into this budget process. Departments are giving their budget submission February 6th. I know the schools Norfolk Public Schools are having budget subcommittee discussions now. KP school assessment will come out in a couple of weeks. We're going to have some information, and I think we're going to see exactly how much, or make some tough decisions collectively on how much free cash we use to balance the budget.
A quick question on what you just said.
Yeah.
You said we're aggressively going after local receipts. That means you've been aggressively, the various departments, et cetera, that assess those are more actively collecting or something?
No, I think he's right-sizing
Or
his assessment.
are you saying that we were underestimating before or we were overestimating?
As part of the budget process, and other people want to chime in, they can. As part of a budget process, you look at your sort of actuals in terms of the revenue that you've brought in.
Yep.
And generally, you want to be conservative in your estimates. Some people go to the exact dollar amount, and if DOR says, hey, we'll give it to you, they'll use that exact dollar amount. If you want to add some protection, you use a 3-year maybe rolling average. That's what I've typically done. Some people can do a 5-year. There's various ways to do it. And we've generally been conservative. But lately, we've tried to move it forward. And if you look at our budgeted revenue, it has gone up a decent amount from what we did previously.
A free question.
Yep.
Free cash question. Where we're kind of rolling a few million along, is that interest bearing where it's sitting, or is it just?
Yeah, we've become a little more aggressive too, and this is one of the questions that I think Rob asked. Obviously, we can get a little more detail, but I'd have Todd do it. But we've been a little more aggressive in turning some of that money into a high yield savings account. I think a lot of communities have seen more interest income, and that's a natural aspect of the environment we were in, higher interest rates, et cetera. So people took advantage of that. We've tried to take advantage of that as well. If you look at some of our year-to-dates, our interest income is a lot more than what it was previously.
So getting back to the beginning of the presentation, the 1.5 projected deficit in your forecast is based on your estimated, it doesn't include the governor's numbers, or it now includes the governor's numbers?
It didn't include the governor's numbers. It just a variety of assumptions. And the assumptions were it depended on what it was, 1.7% to 3.5%. It included overall 4% growth for town departments. That probably won't happen. My budget memo this year asked for departments to try to keep expenditures at 3%. I mean, we'll go through a budget process and we'll tighten up, but that was what it was based on the assumptions. we
And
had.
it doesn't now also include, I think you said, the Tri-County and the KP assessments?
No, it doesn't. It's just
include those.
assumptions.
So, but it's gonna go up a little bit.
It could go up, it could go down. And a good example is one thing I know for sure. Health insurance, we use the
Right.
estimate of 9%, is gonna be more than 9%.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I did take a look at where our estimates were on the governor's numbers. We were close. We're gonna get a little bit more, but we were pretty close, so
Really? You're getting more than you
a little bit.
lowballed it?
A little, I mean, you gotta, we're using estimates. It's just a little bit.
Just to clarify on your question, Justin is assuming an annual increase.
Right.
He plugged in a 6%
No, no,
on King Philip assessment, for instance, and 4% or something on locals.
No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because he then said stuff had come in and I couldn't remember where it
Yeah.
had plugged, so, all right.
When we completed this, we didn't have any information at all. We were shooting completely blind, so.
Does anyone have any more questions on the financial forecast and the projected budget stuff
That's great.
for now? Okay.
Helpful.
Can I ask you a question that you're not going to be able to give me a straight answer is not the right, a good answer.
Okay?
Is there anything that you're expecting in the articles that you're aware of that's going to be difficult, problematic, outside of the budget?
No, actually, honestly, I thought, and that's why I recommend Rich come in aboard.
Yep.
I think the ADUs are going to engender a decent conversation. You know, whether the town is prepared to present an article for the B1, that would probably engender conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of, in terms of other articles, I haven't received anything just yet. Obviously, the warrant closes February 17th, but I haven't received anything yet. I know CPC has some articles. I spoke with Carol. She wants to take a look at some sort of small bylaw changes. There's small bylaw changes that we've thought about. It isn't anything too controversial, I think, at this moment.
As part of the B1, if they were to come in the spring, is part of that proposal to rescind the citizens petition that put in?
Yeah.
All right, so
The
that'll
inclusion-
probably.
the-
Modify or rescind?
The inclusion in bylaw would be something to
What's the
take a
nicer way
look
to
at. It would be something they
We
probably
go
would take a
back
look
to
at.
10 and 10? And I don't know, you can't tell me, because it's not your decision, but that could take an hour of town meeting.
That definitely could be it. That's why I think, honestly, that's why I say I think that
Right.
article will probably be the most important. That's why it was important to hear from Rich.
Cool. Does anyone have any other, we got Justin here, anyone need to ask about, want to raise your issue, Ken?
Which issue?
The Park Street Bridge issue.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
That he can't do anything about.
I'll see you guys later.
Should have dragged the Jersey barriers out of the way and drive over there.
All right, thank you, Justin.
No worries. And as soon as we get going on our budget process, I'll let you guys know.
Okay.
I'll be here fairly quickly.
Oh, streetlights. I want to ask about streetlights.
So the warrant closes what day? And again, I've got my calendar in here, which I can't look at.
Yeah, the 17th.
And when do you think the select board will see the first version of it? 'Cause I like to have, and I think you've made that clear, you want them to look at it before you bring it to us anyway, so.
Yeah. I'm hoping, so bear with me, I'm gonna look at my calendar as well.
17th's a holiday.
Yes. We wanted to give people time. If you submitted on the 14th, we were going to look at it anyway, so give people a little bit more time. The board meets on the 18th. I hope to have it in as good a shape as possible so we can go high level on it. And then the 4th, they can officially take some action on it, hopefully. But, if we're in good enough shape and the board sees it on 18th, I don't mind sending it over to you because there's a good amount of stuff that we already know are going to be on there and that we will be prepared for. So, you'll get a first look at it definitely that week of the 7th.
Yeah, okay, all right, cool. Tthank you.
You're welcome. Is that it?
Yep,
No
thank you.
street lights and no parking lights. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.
Yeah, Justin.
See you later.
So, I think what we should do now is vote on the minutes that Ken forwarded to us and then do a reorganization discussion so that hopefully, not hopefully, I know Ken loves being clerk, but if he's not clerk, he'll be done his duties before that point.
All right, so I motion to approve the minutes from October 17th as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain for no attendance.
You weren't here yet? Okay, all right.
Do you want to call Thais?
Thais
I-
is
Is she on the camera?
here. Do you want me to turn her around?
I'm here. I'm not sure.
Hi, how are you? We're voting on the minutes of, what date? I'm sorry.
October 17th.
October 17th.
Approved.
Okay, great. And there was another set.
Motion to approve the minutes from November 12th.
We never voted on the 17th.
Yes, we did.
Thais did.
Oh, I didn't say, I said all in
we all
favor,
did.
didn't I?
Did the rest?
We all
Oh,
said
yes,
aye.
you guys abstained. I'm sorry.
I was like, wait a minute.
Go to bed.
So motion for the minutes for, oh God, I can't talk today. Minutes from November 12th as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thais?
Hi.
Thank you. Okay, great. So, I have a practice of doing a reorganization meeting at the beginning of every year. We have 3 positions: chairman, chairperson, vice chair, and clerk. I have no feelings one way or the other about whether I want to continue. Jonathan is our current vice chair, and Ken has been as our clerk. I do like to think that we can rotate the clerk's position because it's not a pain like it was when we were 2 years behind on minutes, but it's a diligence thing that Ken's been good at, which I appreciate, but also.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience.
Erica does an excellent job with minutes, would be the one thing I would say, which makes.
I'm glad to give it up because getting to town hall for me for a wet ink signature tends to be a bit of a pain because I don't work in town. So I find my way over there sometimes 2-3 weeks later, and then we're bumping into the minutes aren't timely. So other than that, it's simple. It's just for me getting there to
If you
physically
have the
sign.
capacity to get into town hall one day between Monday and Thursday during the week, it works. Ken's on-site daily job thing sort of makes that difficult, but if any,
Take it on. I'm just up the hill, so
there you go, you can walk down,
I
right?
do. I will.
So.
Great. I make a motion that Melissa's the new clerk.
Can I get a second on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Melissa.
Thank you.
Erica, you will forward the minutes from tonight's meeting to Melissa. And
It's a
you
huge
can,
victory.
I don't know what your printer situation
out, they
is
might
at
make you
home, but
chairman.
if you read them and
doesn't-
forward them to Carol and say, print these and
Signature.
I'll come down and sign them, she's happy to do that.
Okay.
And if she's not there, they're usually in the little basket at the front of
I
the,
can do either. I'm
yeah, okay, so.
fairly reliable printer.
So do you want to remain chair?
Does anyone want to be chair? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, no. Just kidding. Am I allowed to actually call the vote? I just realized that. Maybe Jonathan should have done that.
Maybe.
And Jonathan has been our faithful vice chair for a number of years now, and in fact, was almost going to have to chair tonight because I was going to be late. But are you comfortable in your role?
Haven't done much.
I
That's how you sell it right there.
I'm happy to continue not doing much. Yes.
Until I go on my world tour this spring.
I'm happy to continue. I'm also just as happy if someone else would like to do it as well.
It really is just it's like the vice
An
president.
emergency break glass.
Do you get a house that the Norfolk Observatory grants?
The Blair House.
Play some golf.
I'll nominate Jonathan as chair.
Second.
Vice chair.
All in favor of Jonathan to be vice chair?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did we get the
Congratulations.
remote vote on those? Or?
As long as it's, oh, did she say, yeah?
Hi, Thais.
I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. That concludes our formal business for the evening, I believe.
We're setting a schedule of any sort yet or no?
I was just looking at the calendar, and I think maybe we can probably, you want to schedule a meeting for basically the February 26th, which gives them a week after the warrant closes. I think he said he would present it the very next night to the board, but, or do you want to do it the week before? I don't really have any other things set. I've reached out to Cindy from the CPC. They're gonna have several, including the
Is the Mirror Lake?
Mirror Lake one. Rentham did vote on their portion of the money.
Oh,
Did we vote on our portion now? I don't even
No, we
remember.
never
This
did.
has been,
deferred it twice, I
We've
think.
deferred it twice, but I need answers to the questions that I've asked for 2 years and gotten less than full answers. And I think that the town has some concerns generally, but I don't want to speak for the DPW or anything like that, so, or the Conservation Commission, but I think we're waiting for some stuff from them. So.
If the timing works, I would propose the 26th rather than the 19th.
That's what
because the
I- yeah.
19th is school vacation week.
Very good. Why don't we schedule a meeting for the 26th of February, and at that meeting, we'll set our full schedule, get a preliminary look at the warrant, which will allow us to do that a little bit better, and go from there. Sound good?
Thank you.
oh, I won't be here that night. I'm flying in. I may or may not be here, I don't know.
So we'll meet on the 26th.
Sure.
For those of you who are going away on school vacation week, enjoy yourselves. Oh, I have another one. I've got another one with kids, so I've never worried about that.
Yeah, it's all downhill.
Great. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Here we go.
Aye.
Thank you, folks.
Now we're
Thank you.
So I don't know how